So back at this pretty sizable house here, and I thought we could talk maybe about the HVAC system. This house has 2 units, so it's got a 2-zone system, and we have some interesting spaces that we have to try to make HVAC work around. And in this case, I'm in the main suite. And you can see the ductwork. Luckily, we had all this space up here to put it. So right here, you have one of the returns, and then you've got some supplies on this side, and they're up high, facing directly out, so hopefully they'll bring some nice air across there. The unit itself is up in the attic, but let's walk around a bit. And for up here, it was nice and easy. We were able to put all the things up in the ceiling and pocket them in nicely. So here's one here and hide it along the joist and make it work. So when we go up into the attic, let's get up there, see a little better, and let's go to the unit itself, because this is actually, I think, where we can describe it pretty simply. So this is broken out into essentially, we'll start out with 3 pieces. You've got the air handler, the condensing coil, and then outside is the condensing unit. Condensing unit will give you air conditioning. Or you can get a heat pump system, which essentially is like an air conditioner but runs in 2 different directions. So when you want cold, it takes the heat out. When you want hot, it brings the heat from outside in. And then this is a furnace air handler. So inside of here is a gas burner, some heat exchanges. We don't have to get into the technical side of it, but that's what they're called. So here we burn fire, make warm air. It's that simple. Air comes in here on the return side. So we have one return there. We saw the big one over in the main suite. It sucks the air in. We happen to have a cleaner, air cleaner. Helps clean the air. Comes in here, heats the air up, goes out there, and gets distributed across the building. Air handler, condensing unit, and outside is the condensing coil. Outside is the condensing unit. Here, these are our refrigerant lines. One is slightly larger. So this one inside this insulation is typically slightly larger than this one. One takes compressed gas and brings it in one direction, and another has expanded gas. I'm going to try to describe this in hopefully the simplest terms, but it's a very simple concept, but can be very confusing to actually think about in application. So let's think about water. Water, when it freezes, it shrinks in size, right? And gets smaller. So your condensing coil and condenser compress. If this was water, it would compress it, and it would get cold. It would actually get colder. So there's like 2 ways to do it. You compress it, it gets colder. You let it expand, it gets hotter. We don't use water. In this case, we use a refrigerant, which has different, melting points and everything else, but does essentially the same thing. On one side, it's compressed. On the other side, it's expanded. One side will grab heat. So the expanded side will grab heat. The compressed side will bring cold. You run that compressed gas, that cold gas, through the coils, you get cold air. You blow air from your air handler across the coils that are now cool from the compressed gas. You now have cold air. And on the other side, that air has taken the heat from in here and expanded and now runs outside to be dumped. If this is a heat pump, it does it in 2 directions. So it's either grabbing heat from outside or grabbing heat from inside. And as long as you're over 0 degrees Kelvin, there's heat to be grabbed. It gets harder and harder as it gets colder and colder, but it can do it. But that's essentially how this heating system works. This one is gas. I guess they didn't bring the gas line up yet, but it would go in there. You see that brown wire there? That brown wire is to the thermostat, which Actually, I never paid attention to where they put the thermostat, but you know, you put it somewhere, and that lets your that takes a reading. Essentially, it's an on-off switch based on temperature. You set a temperature, and it'll turn on when it needs to get hot, turns off when it needs to get cold. It gets a little smarter when you have air conditioning because it's like, oh, I need to turn on the coil condenser to get cold, or I need to turn on the fan and fire to get hot. But it's essentially just an on-off switch for temperature. And that's kind of how this works. You could size the ducts out. That's a whole thing in itself. These ducts are insulated because they go outside of the cavity of the building. So you imagine we'll have insulation here at this layer. So this is technically outside the thermal barrier. So the duct itself gets insulated, so you don't end up wasting heat and cold. Over here, we're going to end up building a set of knee walls around. The town doesn't want us to have this attic as living space, but I know someone's going to turn this into either their home office or kids' room or something. So yeah, let's head downstairs. So we're on the first floor now, and this floor also has heating and cooling, but it's not coming from above, it's coming from below. So all of our registers are down low or in the wall. Now, because we're spray foam insulating the house, you know, we were able to bring them up. I don't love bringing them up in the exterior walls, but we could do it here because we're going to have a much tighter thermal barrier. And I wanted to find, hold on, our return air is all coming from downstairs here. So downstairs, I don't know if you remember one of my older videos where we were conditioning the heaters. That's happening in here. These are all our wood floors getting warmed up. Oh, you know what? It's back here. That's right. Just going to turn the video off because I actually need to pay attention to where I'm walking right now. Underneath the barrier, this is one of our return air. You can't even see it. It's not even what's going through this then. Same general concept, except we're down in the basement and we're pumping up instead of down, and the unit is standing up instead of laying down. Here it is, the other end of our return air. So because this is going to be open, we can suck it in right here. And we're going to put our condensing units. Oh, I wonder if I can get over there. So our condensing units will go down over there in that little corner. So there'll be two of them, one to handle the downstairs unit, one to handle the upstairs unit. Essentially just pumping out hot air while letting the inside cool off. That was an oversimplification, well aware, but gives you an idea of how you can heat and cool a house. And that's not the only way, obviously. There's so many other ways out there. Steam heat, older houses usually have them, where you have a radiator someplace, and that radiator essentially acts as the heat exchange. So basically you pump steam through a set of pipes, the radiator heats up, and that radiates heat through a space. Hot water baseboards essentially do the same thing, but with hot water. Where those differ from steam is, A, you're not using as hot of water, you're not creating steam, you're just creating hot water, but then you need to have more of them. So where in this space we may only have 2 or 3 radiators for a steam system, the entirety of the exterior of this space would get a baseboard for hot water radiant. And the hot water radiant also has some other cool features that they're not really new, but they're newer. So like combo systems where it does both your hot water for domestic, so like your drinking hot water and your heating hot water. You have obviously the heat system that we talked about here. This is a split system. You've got the heat pump systems. Those can either be ducted, which is what we were talking about before, where it basically runs in 2 different directions, or the ductless, where you have those like wall-mounted units or some other thing where just the refrigerant goes to each of those and runs. And those are just different, and there's even more from there. But those are just different ways you can heat and cool a space. And up here, where, it's a heat wave right now because it's almost 50 degrees, but, you need to think about how you heat these spaces and